Sometimes I feel that you create fate and fate helps you as well. And third, if not more important, is to prove that local Egyptians can take and turn around a company and place it on a par with international brewers.
It was an incredible sale.
So it was
at the
a
time.
great success story.
Of course.
All of us were Egyptian. Art is one of these tools to learn your history.
Exactly.
Coming from a French educational system and this political home, history is very important.
Yeah, I want to talk about not your marriage, but I want to talk about the fact that you married such a prominent. This episode is brought to you by EFG Hermes One, your one app for investing in more than 35 stock markets worldwide. Welcome again to What I Did Next from A&T Media. I'm Malak Fuad, your host. I sit down with a new guest each month and we take a deep dive into their lives' most pivotal moments. On the show today, I welcome galleryist, author, and archivist Fatenn Mostafa Kanafani. Fatenn has led a life full of twists and turns, and we bonded on this, comparing notes on our early years in Europe. Her career trajectory has seen her go from being a successful marketer with Procter Gamble to being instrumental in the success of the relaunch of Ahram Beverages, leading to its eventual sale to Heineken in 2002. Always fascinated by art, Fatenn then turned her attention to modern Egyptian art and launched Art Talks, a gallery as well as a forum for discussion on all aspects of art. She is now working on a third book in a trilogy looking at Egyptian modern art and artists. She talks to me in great detail about the threads connecting art, politics, and her identity in shaping who she is today. Her father was a diplomat, which meant she moved around a lot as a child. She lived in Brussels, Paris, Istanbul, and eventually Vienna.
And actually, the longer I lived abroad, believe it or not, the more I became attached to Egypt. It's very difficult to understand. And sometimes I sit with myself and try to clarify how come.
And was that when you started working that you became more aware of?
No, from a very young
Before.
age. But I remember there are a few incidents that happened when I was a kid.
Tell me.
That left a very strong mark and that made me challenge the society I lived within. I remember the first day at school for Brussels at the age of 6. You have to realize you're 6 years old. As soon as we stepped into the courtyard, there were a dozen of young girls. It was the Sacré-Cœur, only girls' school. All blondes, blue-eyed, and so on. And we were like odd, seriously, caged animals. I know, me and my sister. And they were asking us, where are you from? What language do you speak? And our French was very little.
And at the time, there were not a lot of foreigners.
Khalis, you're talking... I don't want to tell you the year, but
I'm talking the early 80s, late 70s, maybe.
Late 70s.
Late 70s, yeah.
Not early 80s. Late 70s. The second incident, and I think this one left a very deep mark, that actually I always look at something negative and turn it into a positive. And بالنسبة لي, the glass is always half full.
I love that.
And but that on that moment, this time it was in Paris. I was 12. The lycée was called Lycée Saint-James, I remember very well. And for a reason, I don't know. But on the class assignment, I wrote at the headline, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. There's only one God, but... Okay?
In France.
In France.
And
you're talking...
the country of laïcité.
Bravo, Aliki. And the teacher, it was the French discipline. So he's French, and the class was about French. Okay?
How interesting.
And suddenly he calls my name. You're 12.
Yeah.
And you are called out in a very sarcastic tone. Fatenn Mostafa. So to start with, the pronunciation of the name always bothered me, to be honest.
Of course.
It's Fatenn. Yes, and that's why there is a double N in my name, by the way. Fatenn.
Yes.
And yes, he did give me a lesson in front of the whole class, 25 students, about how religion has no place in a French school, and that's the concept of laïcité.
Fatenn.
And I respected, looking back at hindsight, wherever you are, you have to respect the rules somehow. But I will never forget the intimidation. For me, at that time, it was some sort of bullying.
And it was handled very wrongly.
Completely.
By the teacher.
No, it was racist.
He should have taken you privately and done it alone.
It was on purpose.
Yeah.
It had a lot of baggage.
Of course.
At the age of 12, you don't know this.
Yeah.
But looking back at it, it triggered in me a challenge.
Yeah.
That one, I'll always be proud of my roots, be it Egyptian, Muslim. I'm an Egyptian Muslim woman in the West. And that identity for quite a long time, I'll be very honest, was a challenge to find the right balance. And my father, Allah yarhamu, is the one who really uh, taught us to find the right balance between independence, liberty, and traditional values. And I'll always cherish what he taught us here.
It's interesting because I was in the UK at that time, and it was a very different experience because I think, and it goes back to how those countries deal with immigrants and how they assimilate religion within the state. So England has a much more laissez-faire attitude. There are religious schools. You are free to practice as you like. There aren't the strict separation like in France, which is embedded in the culture.
That's true.
And so these were questions I never had on my own.
But see, this is an example. This is an odd example. I'll be very honest. Yani, throughout my life, things might certainly change now. But till I was 25 and I lived, as I told you, in Vienna, in Istanbul, and in Paris, that is the one and only incident I never felt an alien. I never felt as the other, to be very honest. Taban can feel there's... Of course. Sometimes it does happen. You have this very challenging conversation. In Austria, for example, we were at the peak of the Pan Am flight that was, Salman Rushdie's controversy about the book. So I was faced with a lot of questions and this narrative of you guys are the terrorists and so on. This is another time where, again, the more it happened, the more I became attached to my roots. And I want to prove to them that this is a false narrative. Today, we know even more. And I think that is a very natural reaction. When you are confronted by attacks from others towards you, you entrench. I think that there are two extreme reactions. You either become entrenched, as you said, and you become even more patriotic. Arabism for me is very important. With the whole notion and this this concept, utopian concept, is very important and very close to my heart. So that's one route. But I do know others who could go to the extreme, relax. And go the other way. The other way, okay? I want to know why you went from having an economics education to going into marketing for Procter & Gamble. Corporate world? Well, not just corporate world, but into marketing. You didn't go into a finance or banking world. That's a good question. I think why? At that point in time, when I joined Procter & Gamble, which was also an adventure, and that goes back to the other. Because when I finished university in Vienna, I wanted to stay abroad. So I was killing myself to find a job, or else I would get these phone calls from my father. Come back. Seriously. And it was very regular, every second month. And they had already moved back to Egypt. They were in Istanbul. Okay. But, we have our home here, our family. خلاص بقى. You finished your studies, time to go back home. I killed myself to find a job. So it started with Aslan at university. I used to give part-time English classes for kids, so to make additional money. I taught belly dancing every Saturday. Told me this. I love this. At school, again, at university, I mean, modeling. And that's a fantastic exercise as well. Yes. And then, oh my God, I finished. I need to have a job. So I applied to the United Nations and 10 or 12 corporate multinationals. You have to realize at that time, marketing was the thing. Absolutely. It was not finance like today. That's right. Being as a marketeer was so prestigious. And I was really interested. Yani, even though I studied economics, I took parallel studies or electives in marketing, hotel management. I have a hotel management degree. I was very interested to explore different fields. And Procter & Gamble answered that call? Okay, so 5 out of the 12 said no. Yes. طبعا هم شافوا Fatenn Mostafa. They said, forget it. They didn't even bother. 4 of 3 ignored the letter. And then my friend Lolita, dear friend Lolita, called me, hey, you got a letter. It was a letter, not an email. There's a letter from Procter & Gamble. Honestly, I was in the street. Tears of happiness. I mean, this is the school of marketing. Of course. So I went for the first, it was 5 or 6 interviews, 1 test. Sure. And the last one with the general manager, I remember him, it's as if you're sitting in front of me. And he told me, we'll offer you the job, your energy, your achievement-oriented personality, you're a fit. But 11 times 11 is how much?
No.
And I was like, shit.
I would have lost the job.
I thought blackout, 11 times 11. So 11 times, that's the first challenge.
Wow.
So I knew where I was heading. And second thing, he said, listen, because you're a foreigner, our lawyer will work to get you the work permit. If he gets it, you're on. You're in. If not, okay.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, a month
happened.
later,
Good,
he did. He
good.
has to prove that, I had
So you stayed on in Vienna for a little bit?
In total, I lived for 10
with
years.
Procter.
But with Procter, 4 or 5 years.
And from there, you didn't go straight to Cairo.
Yes, I did.
You did. You came straight to Cairo.
So I spent a good 4 or 5 years in Procter Gamble Vienna, the best school, indeed. Foundations about what a marketeer or actually a business person needs to learn. Honestly, the foundation, initiative, leadership, teamwork, thinking outside of the box. That's beside marketing. Beside teaching you marketing, they tell you what it takes to succeed.
Yeah.
So they give you all these perks of, great training across the world, 5-star hotel if you're traveling, business class.
Vida lauki.
But on the other hand, they expect everything out of you.
Yeah.
And I discovered at that stage that I was, during a very long time, a workaholic.
But you were also young enough and hungry enough that you did it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was...
Yeah.
I give it my all.
You were all in.
And this is one of the lessons. If somebody asks me, what is the greatest lesson you learned from Procter? Is to give it your all.
Yeah. Did the UN ever get back to you?
Oh, yes, of course. It took a long time. The UN got back to me. I worked for a whole year at the International Atomic Energy Agency.
I want to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
I did 2 summers in a row as an intern at the UN in New York.
All right.
And my area has always been media. And my aunt was at the time the spokeswoman for Perez de Cuellar, the Secretary General.
Oh, wow.
So through nepotism, she got me a job 2 summers in a row working in her department.
Okay.
I loved it. But when I came to graduate university, she was my big role model, my aunt. And I said to her, what do you think if I apply properly for a job at the UN? And she said, she began in 1969 or 1970 at the UN as a
pioneer. She's really
very much, but she was literally one of the tour guides, showing people around the building. And eventually she made her way up. But she said to me, don't do it, because the organization has changed so much. It's so bureaucratic now. The idealism that you have now is going to get squashed by the time you're in here for 2 years. Don't do it.
Yeah.
So, like you, it was, that movie, Sliding Doors.
Yes, it was a door.
You have one life that goes past that you didn't take.
Yes, exactly.
That was, for me, always a question. What would have happened if I had done that?
That continued. Sometimes I feel that you create fate, and fate helps you as well.
Yeah.
And for a reason or another, at this point in time, when I was evaluating whether to go back to Egypt or not, the management called me. I was already a brand manager at that time. It's called, I don't know, I think at Procter it's still called brand manager. And they told me, hey, listen, there is a vacancy in Cairo. Would you be interested to go as an international expat?
As an expat.
Oh, I was like, this is God telling me to go and try. Yes. Of course, I didn't even think. Yes. On the spot, I told them, it's a go for me.
Yeah.
6 months later, I was in Cairo and I came to Procter Gamble, Egypt.
Yeah.
So that answers you. And the rest is history, because I told myself, hey, listen, with Procter, I can always be reassigned to any country.
Never
20 years later, I've
exactly the same as me, Fatenn.
Well,
I came to Egypt. Of course, like you, I would come back on holidays.
Yes.
All my life. My father's from Alexandria. My mother's from Cairo. So I have family in both, and I'd go to both. In 2001, in August, and very similar.
Oh my God.
In June of that year, the company I was working for, an American company in London, closed our office. We were the international office. So we were all out of work. And my mother said to me, what are you going to do now? You're at a crossroads. Why not take a break and rethink what you want to do? Take a sabbatical. I was 28. I came to Cairo and had a return ticket. I'll never forget. I had a return ticket for January 20. So I had given myself a long sabbatical.
Yeah.
And came back. 9/11 happened. And I decided,
yes,
what am I going to go back for? I think things will be different there.
yes, that was smart.
And literally 2 months later, I met my husband. I got a job and I didn't look back. And I forgot about the ticket. I found it
That's so
a
funny.
year later.
This is so funny.
And it's not like
Well,
me.
the goosebumps. That's what I always believe.
Fate got in.
Shapes you, or you
Yeah.
shape fate.
Yeah.
Always look at the
Yeah.
glass half full. It works.
It worked.
It does work.
It really
and these are
does.
stations.
So what year was it you came back here?
You're asking me very difficult question. No, seriously. I think I came back with Procter Gamble in 1997.
Before me. Before me.
Before
Yes,
you. I came as marketing manager, and I was managing the detergents, Ariel Tide, which is the big revenue making
Yes, of course.
business. One day in Ramadan, my first Ramadan in Cairo in years, I watched this amazing program of this man. He's distributing gold pounds to people if they have the right answer. And this is how really I said, this is the program for, I know it sounds very capitalistic and very marketing driven,
but
I said, this is the way to get to the, at the end of the day, when you work in marketing, sales, and distribution, or what have you, in a corporate world, you are expected to deliver results.
It's a numbers game.
It's a numbers
game.
Okay, you have to increase profits, market share, what have you. But anyway, I always had in me that I want to give back to the community, whatever community I'm in. And this was the perfect thing. فعملنا Ariel who. It sounds funny, but this was one of the closest to my heart. Honestly,
you're proud of it.
Experience, because it got me into the all over Egypt, to places I think I would have never stepped foot, and I loved it.
But also, as someone who's come from abroad, to have figured out what clicks is amazing.
No, and I was actually very angry, believe it or not, for a reason that nobody was giving back to the community. We are in the 1990s, early 20s, or to 2000. And I said, at that time, the economic situation was not very, very religious, very economic problems, whatever, heading to 2011. But we have to help, So I went I went all over Egypt with the group of the producer. I contacted Tariq Alem, his director. When he entered Procter and Gamble Cairo, seriously, when he entered, كلهم قالوا انت جايبه مين? Who the hell is I mean, you are talking completely different, they were, and presenting and getting regional approval for this program was not easy. But this is where you give it your all. Once you know your business inside out, and you are seriously, and Ahdan, kisses, hugs. People were so genuine,
and it's very satisfying.
I love it. I loved it. I would do
There's
it over and over again.
There's a humanity here.
Yes,
and the human connection in Egypt is extremely powerful. When we come back after the break, Fatenn tells me about her move to Ahram Beverages from P&G and her final pivot into the art world. Don't go away, that's coming right up. This episode is brought to you by EFG Hermes One, your one app for investment across more than 35 stock markets worldwide. With EFG Hermes One, you can buy and sell orders in real time for immediate execution across multiple global markets. You can keep track of your favorite stocks by creating and customizing multiple watch lists, and make informed investment decisions with their advanced technical analysis tools to study market trends and investor behavior. So supercharge your financial journey and download the EFG Hermes One app on the Apple App Store and on Google Play, and start investing today. Welcome back to my conversation with Fatenn Mostafa Kanafani. Tell me about the jump from Procter to Ahram Beverages.
Oh, I loved it.
Actually, this is for me a huge pivot for you.
That's what I did next.
It's not the pivot because you've had already some big ones.
Yes.
Up until this point, but this is an important one.
This was a very important station in my life, and a very close, of course, close to my heart. So I worked for 1 year for Pepsi and launched Lay's shaped potato chips, and it was with the Berzi family anyway. And the move from two multinationals to a completely Egyptian, homegrown, formerly nationalized, and then freshly privatized, was for me, it was so appealing. I love challenges, and then a company that sells very difficult products at that time was, from a marketeer point of view, wow,
A
I
dream.
wanna jump
A
into
challenge.
that. And actually, the person who called me, and I was at Pepsi, I remember in the office, was Tariq Noor.
It
Called
was
me.
his account.
I
It was
think he
his.
was bidding for it.
Ah,
And he said, listen, I met this man, Ahmed Zayed, who had just acquired with the
yes,
Luxor Group
yes.
the shares from the government.
So it had become a private company at that.
Just like 3 months.
And this is
3,
what
4
year?
months.
99?
Yes. And so I got Ahmed Zayed he called me, let's have an interview and a chat. And as they say, the rest
The
was
rest is history.
history.
And you went in as CEO.
No, the first 2 years I had to I was on the board of the executive board, but not the CEO yet. I was the marketing director.
I see.
And had to build there was no marketing
There was
department.
nothing.
This
They were
was
beginning from scratch
from
because it was a
scratch. It
national
was a
company.
great company, by
Yes,
the way.
yes.
So you are buying a gem,
Yeah.
a gold mine, but has a lot of inefficiencies.
It had brand equity.
Amazing.
It was well known,
Amazing.
of course.
I mean, Stella.
Of course.
Great name.
Yes.
The whole history of
Yeah,
Egypt
yeah.
goes through Stella
Of course,
somehow.
of course. But that must have been satisfying because you've got all this experience from at least 7 years of being a marketer.
Yes, more than 7 years.
More,
Yes.
and you come and you're creating from scratch.
What appealed to me, as I said, it was a lot of parameters. Freshly privatized,
Yes.
so formerly for like 50 years. It was nationalized 63, and now so it had a lot of baggage. Great brands, and some of them completely forgotten. Fayrouz, Birel, name it.
Yes.
So I knew as a marketeer, a huge opportunity.
Mhm.
And third, if not more important, is to prove that local Egyptians can take and turn around a company and place it on a par with international brewers.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And indeed, in a span of 7 years, there was an executive team, and it was a complete turnaround. The
Yeah.
proof is that it was sold at a record
Yes.
price back in 2001 to Heineken, you know.
It was an incredible sale.
So it
at
was
the
a
time.
great
Yeah,
success
of course,
story.
Of course.
All of us were Egyptian. We were an Egyptian team. And the beauty of this job, then I was promoted to CEO of the wine business when it was acquired, because the wine business was acquired later, 2 years later.
I see.
So part of being on the executive board was to go to what is still called roadshows. So we'd go for 3-4 days around the world to bid and to attract investors to the company. You know, it was an Egyptian
and it was
company
and an Egyptian
on
success
the stock
story.
market.
Yeah, of course.
And you know that certain segments or products that are profitable per se. The question was how to increase the sales. Alcoholic beverages in general can be extremely profitable, especially given the taxes on the government was protecting the business. So you have a great opportunity. Now, from a marketing point of view, how do you market and thread between the permissible and the impermissible?
Because
and
you're
I
dealing
love
with a company that sells
in a
alcohol.
Muslim country. The first challenge was to build a marketing department from scratch. And again, here you are coming, all of us, not just me, we came as aliens. Mindol, who bought this company, and these people have been there for 20 or 30 years. They feel they own the business.
And they felt territorial.
Very territorial, and also not really very and that's a worldwide.
Yes. They felt threatened.
Threatened, and also not accepting novelty and technology and innovation.
Yeah.
You know, and that's normal.
Of
That's
course.
human nature
Of
everywhere.
course.
So the challenge was to pick and bring them in as a team, and it did work. You know.
Before we move on to your what you've been doing since I've known you, the arts world, I want to talk about your husband.
Yes.
I want to talk about not your marriage, but I want to talk about the fact that you married such a prominent, a person from such a prominent Palestinian family. I know that your political awakening was from before you met him.
Yeah,
he amplified
Fatenn amplified it in significant
me
ways.
about that.
So I was working for Ahram Beverages already. So I was settled in Egypt. And as I said, sometimes, you know, it's like a chess. Things work.
And they fit in place.
They really fit in place. And I'm very grateful for all of that. So there is this friend of ours, anyway, that turned out to be a common friend. Hey, let's go and spend the weekend in Sharm el-Sheikh. So anyway, to make a very long story short, I met my husband in Sharm el-Sheikh, which became midway between Ramallah, where he used to work for Jawel, which is the first and only Palestinian telecommunications mobile company. So he came from Ramallah to Sharm, and I came from Cairo to Sharm, and this is where we met. And believe it or not, it was love at first sight, by the way.
Was it really?
Yes, it was. I said, this is the guy. It took me months to remember how to pronounce the family name. I'm very familiar, but Kanafani, Kafaneni, you know. Seriously. But أول ما شفته, I said, this
you
man
knew
is
it.
very... No, I said, this man is special.
Wow.
And he lives in Ramallah. He's coming here. He's half Egyptian, half Palestinian, multilingual. He has this cowboy hat on the beach. It clicked. Seriously.
Lots of boxes were checked.
Funny. Sense of humor, incredible. You know, for me, we clicked in 1 second. فحطيت طبعا next target. لا I'm kidding.
Interesting. Yes. My next challenge.
My next challenge. خلي بالك كمان long distance كمان.
So he was living in Ramallah.
Yeah. He was working in Ramallah, you know. Maybe that's the part of the excitement, the adventure I loved about it.
And your idealism.
Absolutely. He fell into my my ideal. He has it all. The West and East, Pan-Arabism. And then, of course, the more I got to know him, the more I found out that he was extremely engaged as his family in the cause. يعني عندي صور فيديوهات when he was at University of Maryland, he studied in the US, were daily, protesting, meeting Martin Luther King.
It's in the family.
It's in the family, okay? And the fact that he accepts to leave any potential job and go and work in Ramallah during a very tough times. Since forever, it's a very tough time. There is a story about the first time I went to Ramallah to visit Hakam. We were married, and he said, "Okay, let's go. I'll take you there." And for me, this was like the adventure. So we went through Amman, and Hakam told me, he is very clear. You do at every single checkpoint, and when we are there, you do what I tell you to do. We look, and you do what I tell you to do.
Copy me.
لا وتسمعي كلامي. You know, you have to listen. This is no joke. So I did abide by the rules, and in the first checkpoint, we're going from Ba'amen, and we want to go into Ramallah. But there is this curiosity in me. I love taking pictures. So we're standing at this checkpoint. وبكل سذاجة, with all naivety, I get my phone, there was no camera, the big camera out, and I want to take pictures of all these people standing in the queue, you know. Huge queue. وفي reason or another حكم واقف بعيد وانا هنا وانا صوتي and اسمع لك والله العظيم this maybe 19 maximum 20-year-old soldier, you there with the camera, as if life stopped. Hakam and I, we looked at each other. He knew there was trouble.
Oh, wow.
Because you're not allowed to take pictures. He didn't mention don't take pictures. He just told me do what I tell you to do. There was this, you know, and this is the moment I realized, whoa,
this is serious.
This is really serious. Dehumanizing. He's 19, and he came to make a very long story. He took the film, you know, these cameras with the film. He took it. It had a lot of pictures. It included pictures of honeymoon. You know, 36 pictures. They took it.
He took the whole thing.
And Hakam managed to get us in without any problem, but I know that for other people it would have been maybe a death sentence.
That could have been the end.
That could have been the end, or go back, you know.
I know from what you've told me in the past that all the way through your life, art has had a running soundtrack in your mind.
Yes.
When Ahram Beverages was sold and you were suddenly unemployed.
No, I quit.
Oh, you quit?
Oh, yeah. No, it was sold and they wanted me to continue.
I see.
I decided
you decided to
I like to turn pages. The challenge was for me, khalas. We delivered as a team. The most successful at that time. Privatization story. We made the point. Egyptians, locals can do it and do it masterfully. Seriously. So for me, it was what's next.
Yes.
I wasn't interested in pursuing this career anymore.
Did you take a break?
I did a break. I did take a break, and I did make the choice to take a break to focus on, at that time, my 2 sons.
Your 2 boys.
My daughter came later.
And during that sabbatical, you started to develop the concept for what became Art
Art
Talks.
Talks, yes. The first time I came to realize that I might be interested in art was the first weekend I spent in Vienna as a student.
Okay.
So I asked my friends, we wanted to make friends, my sister and I, Shireen and I. So we went first weekend to the group كده كانوا واقفين, hey guys, what are you doing this Saturday and Sunday? We want to make friends. And we heard the most unexpected answer. We're going to the museum tomorrow at 10, and after 10, we're going to have a lunch at 12.
Very organized.
And I'm like, museum at 10?
And you're
On
young.
Saturday?
And you're young.
What about bowling or whatever?
Exactly.
Going for
Something
coffee,
fun.
something. This was completely, when you say out of the box, for me, was like, we talk politics, literature. It didn't sound appealing at all. I'll be very honest. But we said, hey, no, we'll go. We want to make friends. We want to appear bad that we're part. We belong.
We want to get in. Yes.
We want to get
involved.
To be part of the group.
We're
part of the group. And we did go. It was the Belvedere Museum in Vienna. It's a beautiful. But see, Vienna
That's
is
where the
Klimts
place. Are.
Bravo.
Yes.
No, and Vienna per se is really
it's
a very beautiful.
It's like a chocolate box town.
Yes,
it's
you
so
learn
pretty.
how to waltz, you learn classical music, you go to the opera, you do all of this.
Yes.
And for us, both my sister and I, were novelties. How to waltz, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you know. Learning German was an adventure. But anyway, so I went to this Belvedere Museum, and as you rightly say, there were a lot of Gustav Klimt, but there was one in particular, and you have to know, zero knowledge about art.
Yeah.
Zero knowledge, interest, I didn't know. And I see this magnificent, and it's a very large painting of two people embracing, that the closer you look, you realize it has a lot of ancient Egyptian inspiration. The colors, the motifs, the symbols.
And the gold that he used.
Taban, the gold, the blue, and so on. That's how I saw it.
That was your interpretation.
Western friends didn't see that, okay? But I was stunned. How can a piece of art trigger so many emotions? And as they say again here, the rest is history. I became very interested. And while studying and working with Procter at the United Nations, I made it a point to go and attend for free دراسات حرة, free studies at the Vienna University,
and
State
a lot
University.
of museums do these courses as well.
Yes, but I wanted to go to the foundations. I always like to learn from the foundation. طبعا my German, I went to study German on my own كده. Was not, يعني, maybe I got 30% in the first few months. You have 50%, but I took notes, and you don't get a degree. It's free studies. But I wanted to learn, and they take you through the history of Western art.
Of course.
Yeah. But this was a great foundation.
Of course.
From learning all of this, you go to the museum.
Any art education is good.
Including,
whichever point of view it's coming from.
Absolutely.
You're learning how the technique works, appreciation of art.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what the art is.
Yes,
you can be learning Korean, Japanese.
But can you imagine that students go and valse and
it's
go
amazing.
to the opera? No, seriously,
yeah.
And every year there's the season of the opera house, and you go and you have the open ball.
Yes.
Okay, and you
the
dress.
debutantes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
This is Vienna is unique in that angle.
But it's their traditions.
It's their traditions, but it provided me with a lot of classic and I wouldn't say intellect, but a side of my personality that I had no idea about.
Of course.
And I became very interested.
Yes.
Very interested.
And so you continued with your own education.
Yes.
Over the years.
In Vienna. And then when I came here, the moment I came here with Procter, I said, now has come the time to understand more about the history of Egyptian modern art. And I have to admit, it was very challenging to understand. Very rare to find books. And if they were, then they are very old, maybe. It was very challenging. Which galleries, which collectors do I go and talk to? It was a lot of different setbacks that I decided through our talks that maybe to overcome by providing art talks about art from different people, because I faced a lot of challenges. How do I get to know our history about the art if there's not much?
But you also, I think, wanted to begin institutionalizing that industry, this world, by having regular. I remember I used to come to you a long time ago.
Had talks.
You'd have talks,
and we would go to.
You'd do private tours in homes.
In homes, and have a speaker coming from around the world to come and talk about a certain topic. but also having access to private collections, I was very surprised that not one of the people I called refused to welcome 50 strangers. And I'll always be grateful for that.
Yeah.
So we visited very important collections. I don't know, from Naguib,
Yes.
Sawiras to Ahmed Heikal,
Yes.
Hisham al-Khazandar, Mohsin Noor. We went to their
Yes.
homes and we discovered a lot of history.
But what's great about that as well, Fatenn, is that you're creating an ecosystem.
Yes.
You're educating that generation on our history.
Yes.
So it's not just that these collectors are sharing their collections. The people attending are learning, are being educated along the way.
Because art is one of these tools to learn your history.
Exactly.
Coming from a French educational system and this political home, history is very important. Yeah. The part of the Arabism and Egyptianized person that I am, I'm very interested in our history.
And
not being taught by others what is our history. And art is one of the most fascinating ways of discovering the truth, somehow.
I wanted to ask you, why is your specialty modern Egyptian art? Why not? I mean, now we have contemporary has become very prevalent now in Egypt and the region. But why modern? Was it because at the time it was a rich foundation that was untapped? What was the thinking for you?
See, during the 20th century till the mid-60s, Egypt was the cultural city by excellence of the Arab world. Like Procter Gamble was the marketing school by excellence. Egypt was the center of intellectual rebellion, protests, have you, of the 20th century. If you want to learn about history, and I'm very passionate about history as a researcher, and now I had discovered art, I wanted to combine both. What is the Is there an intersection between artist and history? Nationalism, British occupation. We tend to forget all of this.
Yeah.
Okay. Egypt has gone through different phases that are insane.
Absolutely.
Great avant-garde artists, intellectuals. It's not just the usual suspects of Taha Hussein, Abbas al-Aqad. No, there were tons of very cosmopolitan, intellectual thinkers, poets, rebels that existed that for a reason or another history has forgotten. And to answer you, I was and I'm still am extremely intrigued by this period.
It's such a rich
Maybe
part
it doesn't interest anybody, but for me, I've dedicated the past 50 years to studying the history of 20th century Egypt with a special focus on the cultural side. The intersection between art, politics, religion.
It's such a rich part of our world. And you told me something so interesting last time we chatted, is that you have a very rich archive that you've been working on for many years of different artists, different writers. You're putting together archives just to preserve this. It's our history,
One of the most important, if you ask me, one of the most important paintings I've ever bought as soon as I came to Egypt with no knowledge whatsoever, is thanks to my husband, who are Palestinian. And there was this painting in Safar Khan of Tahia Halim, dated 1973, of Al-Aqsa, of Jerusalem, part of Jerusalem, very big.
Yeah.
And at that time, I had just met Hakam, and I said, wow, I'm going to buy it if it works,
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell my parents the price.
They wouldn't have understood it.
I told them that one at the end, and my mother was like, oh my God,
are you
paid
crazy?
so much money for this painting?
Yeah.
I'm very happy that I have
and
it. It's a magnificent.
And you still have it.
It's of
course
part of the.
Well, it's part of your romantic
legacy.
History as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, light, fun. Don't overthink this. What I'm going to say to you. I'm going to say some things to you, and you pick.
All right.
Ready?
Oh, I make a choice. Okay.
Lightning round. Image or the written word?
The written word, believe it or not.
Viral clip or long-form narrative?
Viral clip.
I love it. That's the doctor's waiting room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You told me to be very honest and spontaneous.
Good. Generalist or specialist?
Specialist.
Specialist.
Yeah.
Although as a marketer, You're a generalist.
But you specialize. You know your brand inside out. You become the godmother of the brand.
That's right.
Oh, you learned that at
That's true.
Oh.
Group work or solitary pursuits?
Both. I can't.
50-50?
You must. Yes.
50-50.
Success is a group work. Solitary is that you discover yourself and you come up with out-of-box ideas. It has to be both.
Has to be both.
No success is alone, and solitary is quite solitary, but I love it also.
But it's fulfilling also.
It's very important because you research, you
and
write.
You enrich
this
yourself.
Archive is a solid. That's my retreat, by the way. This is my heaven here.
Yeah. It's
beside my home with my
you feed
children
yourself.
and husband. I love coming here.
Yeah.
I love. It's a privilege. I'm grateful for it.
If you had to choose one other profession, what would it be?
A lawyer.
Me too.
I would love to be a lawyer.
Me too.
I would have loved to be a lawyer.
That would have been my
And right now, I would be busy.
You and I, we're too similar. I love
seriously,
it.
You too?
I would have been my choice.
I would have loved to be a lawyer.
Me too.
I
would
love
have loved to do it.
defending.
Yep.
I love fighting against injustice. Or I would have loved, as I mentioned maybe earlier, I would have loved to be a student in the United States right now, protesting.
What's your favorite activity?
Being with my kids, traveling all around with my kids and my husband.
Did you go to Japan with your family?
Yes, with my dad, late dad and mom, and sister.
Not your nuclear family,
my parents. He was posted in Japan, his last post.
Interesting. I'm dying to go
After
there.
Istanbul,
yes. What's your least favorite activity?
Oh my God. Running errands. I hate going to the bank, putting gas, this kind of things.
Stuff.
Yeah, the boring
stuff. Because it takes you away from what you like.
Yeah. But there are things that you hate, but you have to do.
Yeah. I'm going to say a part of a sentence and you finish it. I have a hard time.
I have a hard time accepting the injustices that are happening around us. I really have a hard time.
Yeah.
And there are opportunities to feel that you can contribute somehow. So one of the things we regularly do is invite Gazan artists who escaped to come and we exhibit for them. We do fundraising. It's a drop in the ocean. No? But to answer you, it's injustice. I can't take it anymore.
The last question is a fun one and a positive one. I get joy from.
I don't want to repeat myself and being with my boys and daughter and husband, but I get joy. Oh my God, I get joy when these men and women who I call for, I have a whole team helping me find and build this archive. They're usually newspaper sellers and old book sellers. And when they call me and say, hey, we have bags, and they literally come with black plastic bags or boxes. Oh my God, I have it like a kid. I'm going into a supermarket or a toy shop. Oh, la bigo with tons of things. And 99% of them, they don't read French or English. And you have to realize in the 20th century, a lot of the publications were in French.
In French,
So that's really helping me out. So they come with all these books. They have no idea really what it is, but Fisowar, Yamadem Fisowar, and so on. Some of them are very knowledgeable. There's one in Tanta who is super knowledgeable.
In Tanta?
Yes.
Wow.
He's very precious to me.
Wow.
Anyway, so when they come with these boxes, wow, I discover things.
Fatenn, we're done.
Thank you.
That was my conversation with Fatenn Mostafa Kanafani. On a bonus episode out next week, I talked to Fatenn about her work in documenting, codifying, and cataloging her research and art. She's contributed a chapter in the book Daughters of the Nile, authored Modern Art in Egypt, and is now working on a third book. You can find out all about this on the bonus episode, so stay tuned. We also have an encore episode with advertising superstar Ali coming out at the end of the month. It's not to be missed. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Malak Fuad, and this show is produced by Chirag Desai. You can find video versions of our episodes on YouTube and on Spotify. I'll see you again next week.